Okay, this is part 3 of Introduction to Variables. Just to make sure you're all ready for this video, you should have your Introduction to Variable notes in front of you, where we went through the customer order scenario. You should have opened customer order starter and Java file and removed starter from the class name, and then you should have done a save as to your chapter 2 folder. If you've done all that, you're ready to go, and you should be looking right now at this in your customer order document Java file. So going through the latte order scenario on paper modeled a way to plan and prepare for writing a program in Java. Okay. In other words, before writing the source code in Java, if you can go through the program yourself on paper, that's going to be an important thing to do. Going through the program yourself on paper is one way to plan and prepare to write the program in Java. Okay, so you plan and prepare, and then you write your program. So step 1 is to plan the program on paper, write the source code in JGrasp, or I guess Java in our case as well. Compile and debug the program to remove syntax errors, and then test the program by running and executing the program and evaluating the output. Now this is a very important step right here that some students are going to cheat on, and because you run and execute the program, but what some students are going to do is they're going to not evaluate the output. You always evaluate the output and make sure that the output is coming out like you want it to, or like you desire it to. In this demo, I want to show how variables store data that can be used later. And this is a very important line. Variables store data that can be used later. Variables are declared, they're assigned, and used. Declared first, then they're assigned, and then they're used. You can't assign a variable that hasn't been declared, and you can't use a variable that hasn't been declared and assigned. Alright? And other words that we use are initialized for assigning and called for using. Okay, those are other terms that we'll use. So what we look at here now is we have the public, or we have the class header. The purpose of the class is to calculate and display a customer's latte order. And so we have our main method. We're doing our indenting right. And so the first thing that we want to type here is we're just going to put a comment line to say what we're going to do. We're going to declare and initialize we're going to declare and initialize each variable, okay, each memory location or storage location. And so the first one, if you look on your notes, we're going to declare the customer name variable. So we start in a declaration with the data type, which is, this is a string, and then the name of the variable, which we're going to name customer name. And as we'll talk about later on, variables for naming variables, you start with the lowercase, uppercase for class names, lowercase for variable names. That's how we can distinguish them. It's just conventional. And then we're going to hit the space bar, because we want to put horizontal space around symbols when it's appropriate. And then the value is going to be assigned to this, and so we're going to go Sally Sue. And then we finish off a declaration line of code with a semicolon. Alright, so we've just declared and initialized, or we have just declared and assigned our first variable. And what this line of code does is it actually names a memory location in the computer memory and configures it to handle strings and then we've given it its initial value. We have assigned it to be the literal string, or the string literal, or the string Sally Sue. Okay, the next variable that we're going to declare is going to be an int, and its name is num of lattes. Notice how we're using camel casing, but we're starting with the lowercase letter. And then we're going to space, and then we're going to go equals 5. Now, what we're really going to say here is this, we're going to get used to this. This is maybe look like an equal sign, but in Java it's an assignment operator. So we say int num of lattes is assigned 5. We're assigning 5 to the variable num of lattes. The next one is double, and then cost per latte. Make sure you're putting the spaces around the assignment operator. And we're going to just type 3.5 because really the Java is not going to keep zeros at the end of decimals. Alright, so even though we want to say $3.50 or 3.50, all we really need to put is 3.5. Now you can put 3.50, and all Java will do, the compiler will do, is just store it as 3.5. So it's no big deal if you want to put the 0 at the end. Okay, now we're going to do the last variable, which is we're going to call cost of order. Notice that all of these variables are descriptive of the data that will be being stored in them. So we don't use X, Y, and Z, things like that in math. We use descriptive words, and we want them to be as short as we can and still be descriptive. Now this one's a little bit different, because this isn't just a variable or a value that's just going to be right there, like Sally Sue and 3.5. This is actually going to be a calculation. So we're going to assign a calculation to this variable and let Java do the calculation. So we're going to use num of lattes, or in other words, this is a variable call. We're going to take the value of num of latte and we're going to multiply, which is the asterisk symbol. Okay, multiplication is demonstrated by the asterisk, and then we are going to multiply the num of lattes. Oops, I didn't spell this right. That would have been a problem. And then we're going to go times cost per latte. All right, and that is a calculation, and then we have two variable calls, and this is two cases where variables are being used, their values are being used. Okay, so now what we can do is just put one blank line after our last declaration, and now what we want to do is we want to display the order on the screen. Actually, we're going to not display the entire order, but we're going to display a summary of the order. We are going to print, we want the output to say that Sally Sue purchased 5 lattes for $17.50. And so if we go down to line 36 and we do our system.out, now here's the important thing. The very first thing says Sally Sue. So let me demonstrate. Don't you do this, but I'm just going to do this to demonstrate. Sally Sue. Well, maybe I won't do that. I better not do it that way. The point is that Sally Sue, the first thing, actually comes from a variable. It is the value of a variable, and so we are not going to do a literal string or a string literal. We are going to write the name of the variable that holds the value that we want to print. That is called the variable call. This is called using a variable. And then we're going to throw in what's called a concatenation operator, which is the plus sign. So you think it's a plus sign, but it's really a concatenation operator in Java. Although it's also used as an arithmetic or an addition operator as well. So we are going to concatenate, in other words, we're going to join to it what's next. Now after Sally Sue, notice the next character is a space. So we want to literally print a space. And so how do you print things literally? You use quotation marks. So the first character is a space. And then we're going to, then it goes space, purchased, and then there's another space, and then there's a 5. Now the 5, notice, is a value of a variable. So we're not going to include it in a literal string. So we're going to end the literal string, or the string literal, do the concatenation operator. And notice these symbols. For horizontal space, we're going to put spaces between each thing, or before and after the symbol, the concatenation operator. So that's horizontal space that we're using. Okay, so purchase 5. Now 5 comes from num of lattes. So we are using a variable. And then plus, and then we're going to go after the 5 is a space, lattes, space for space, $sign. And so we're going to take all of this. In fact, if you want, you could just go like this, because the 17.5 is really going to come from a variable. So we're going to take this part of it and put this inside of quotation marks. So it will literally print the space and then lattes for and the $sign. Now, if the line starts getting too long, you don't want to have to scroll. Okay? So what we want to do now is hit enter and then tab, and we want to get into under customer name. So under the C, we want to continue this print statement. This is one way to do it. So now we're going to have, after the $sign, we have 17.50. Now technically we want to do 1750. I'm going to show you later how to do that, but right now all we're going to be able to do is print 17.5. And so in here we're going to call the cost of, but I forgot the concatenation operator. Cost of order. And then notice after it gets the value 17.5, there's still something left on this line that we want to output. And that's the period. The period is going to be its own string literal. So we're going to do the concatenation operator, and then around quotation marks we're going to put the period, or within the quotation marks. And that is the end of the print statement. Alright? And so if you look at this, then you notice, now this is what I need you to type in here. In that, where this has a blank, double click on the blank. It says we use 3 variables, and in parentheses put variable calls. So 2 ways to say the same thing. We use 3 variables and 3 string literals to display the message. Now at this point you should be able to compile, and if you got some errors you're going to have to debug it, but then you run it. And so notice all this code up here before the print statement is stuff that was going on in the background. It's not displayed on the screen because there's no print statements. The only thing that's displayed on the screen is your print statements. And so notice it prints Sally Sue purchased 5 lattes for $17.50. It does not, we didn't get that by one huge string or one huge string literal. This is printed by the combination of variables and string literals, or variable calls and string literals. Alright, so that's how what we did in our notes translates to writing your code, your source code in Java. And that's it.